Excellent. I see some headphones popping on. I also see some people getting excited for some refreshments. In the interest of time and keeping things rolling, I want to introduce the next session here on stage 3, focused on the product experience. This next session is From Data to Outcome, how the product engagement score can help move the needle for your business. And if you're not familiar with the product engagement score, it is a very cool new feature in the Pendo platform. And I am pleased to introduce today Geoff Lewis, the VP of Data Analytics, and Olivia MacDougal, the product manager, who are responsible for product engagement score here at Pendo.
Hello, and welcome to From Data to Outcome, how product engagement score can move the needle for your business. My name's Olivia MacDougal. I'm a product manager here at Pendo. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Heck yeah. This is Geoff Lewis, our VP of Data Analytics, and today we'll be talking to you about our journey to product engagement score, how Pendo created and launched a brand new product metric to the industry. Then I'll be handing it off to Geoff, who's going to talk about how we've been able to connect product engagement score to financial outcomes. And finally, I'll give you a sneak peek into what's coming in product engagement score next. So our journey to product engagement score really starts with another popular product metric, Net Promoter Score, or NPS. Now, the premise behind NPS was to create a simple, i.e. single question survey that was easy for users to fill out and equally easy for those companies to understand how those users feel about their products. Fast forward a few decades later, and it has become the product metric that executives, investors, and VCs ask for. But there's some issues with NPS, as we've seen over the years. And I'm not saying that NPS isn't valuable. It is, and we measure it, and we empower our users to do the same. But NPS doesn't tell the whole story. While valuable, NPS isn't a reliable predictor of company growth. So we at Pendo started thinking about how we could help tell the rest of that story, basically complete the picture. We started thinking about why people gravitate to NPS in the first place. Yes, it's important to measure sentiment, and yes, that question of how likely are you to recommend our product is a powerful one, since we know that word of mouth is a big growth engine for tech companies. But we really started thinking that one of the reasons that NPS is so attractive is because it simplifies measurement down to just a single number. So if NPS is all about how users feel, we wanted to come up with a single aggregated score to capture how users engage with a product based on the behavioral analytics data. There was a lot of things we thought about as we started crafting this score. First, we wanted to measure user behavior in an unbiased way. One of the issues with NPS is that it's highly subjective, both the responses that come in from your users, as well as even the interpretation of the score and the verbatims themselves. We also wanted something that was quantitative as opposed to qualitative, something that was based on actual engagement numbers as opposed to feelings about the product. And the metric needed to be actionable, something that could help inform us of future tactics and strategies that we could then employ to help users engage with the product. Finally, it also needed to be complex enough to be accurate, yet simple enough to be easily understood. And last but not least, we wanted it to be easily accessible from within the Pendo platform with very little effort for our users. Quite a Herculean task, no? Lots of requirements. So where we landed and what we launched is the product engagement score. It's a single composite metric used to measure user engagement, where NPS is a single number to track sentiment, PES is the other side of the coin, a single number to track engagement. And just like with NPS, you can use it to track historical trends over time, you can drill down into the data powering the score, and of course, you can report out on it to those execs, investors, and VCs. Product engagement score, as I mentioned, is a composite score, so it's made up of 3 components. The first is adoption. This essentially answers how much of your user base is using your core product functionality, those key features, the aha moments where customers realize the value of your product. The second pillar, the second component, is stickiness. Essentially, how often do users come back to your product? This is another industry metric you may already be measuring. And the third is growth. Essentially, do you regularly acquire and keep new users? Yes, you have champions of your product, but are they inviting their peers and their colleagues? And are those users becoming engaged users? We launched Product Engagement Score earlier this year in January 2021. And since then, we've iterated a ton and made a lot of great improvements thanks to a lot of customer feedback. But as a product manager for Product Engagement Score, I'm always thinking about how we can connect product outcomes to business outcomes. So we've embarked on a journey with our data science team to essentially connect Product Engagement Score to key financial metrics and therefore those higher level business outcomes. So without further ado, I'm excited to hand it off to Geoff Lewis.
Thanks, Olivia. Can everyone hear me? Excellent. All right, let's get into some numbers. So I probably don't need to convince this group that engaged users and product engagement is a good thing or that higher scores are better than lower scores. But I would like to talk about how PES can be connected to your financial outcomes. So if you are a user or you're a customer and you see your PES going up, should you celebrate and expect more revenue? Or if you see your PES going down, should you freak out and think everyone's going to churn? So we really wanted to try to quantify the financial benefit of PES. We want to translate a PES score to dollars. And that's really the question we set out to answer with our own business. So how do we go about doing this? Pendo's business is a recurring revenue business like many of yours. So we sign customers for a fixed period of time. After that time elapses, they are up for renewal, and we have a conversation to say, you're going to renew your contract or not. And so we looked at every single renewal we had in the first half of this year and classified them in one of three buckets. Churn, we lost the customer, don't like that. Expansion, so the customer renewed their contract and it grew by at least 10%, or flat renewal. So you renewed your contract but didn't grow significantly. So we went down a bunch of different paths, but it decided the simplest way is to have these three outcomes, which are great, good, and bad. Okay, so then we rolled the clock back 365 days from the time of renewal and said, let's look at each of your engagements. What did your stickiness look like? What did your adoption look like? What did your growth look like? And what did your PES, the combination of all three, look like? And what we tried to do is say, using just this data, nothing else, could we predict which one of these three buckets you'd land in, expand, flat, or churn? So what did we find? Good news. PES is correlated with customer retention. So this graph is showing on the y-axis the average PES score, and on the x-axis the amount of time before the customers came up for renewal. So you can see that this green bar at the top is higher than for the customers that expanded than the yellow bar, which are the customers that renewed flat, to the red bar, or the pink bar, sorry, which are customers that churned. So we do see positive correlation here. Additionally, you can see that the separation of these lines happens relatively early, and that's super important because we want to be able to use PES as a leading indicator. If you find out that your customers aren't engaged, 2 weeks before they're up for renewal, there's probably not a whole lot you can do about that. So you need time to be able to observe it and react and intervene in case things aren't going the way you hoped. So on some of these next slides, we're going to focus on month 6. We chose month 6 because in the middle of the graph. Also, we figured, hey, it's enough time to say the user should be up and running. They should have enough time to really understand the value of the software. And hopefully it's early enough to intervene in case we wanted to do something about it. So we'll focus on month 6 on some of the subsequent slides. So what happens in month 6? So we took PES and we split it up into thirds, high, medium, and low. High was greater than 60, medium was between 30 and 60, and low was less than 30. And so what you can see with this chart is that the customers that had a medium PES churned at a rate that was about 2 times more than customers with a high PES. And customers with a low PES, less than 30, churned about 2.5 times more than the customers with a high PES. So these little purple numbers in data science, when you slice your data by a dimension, in this case, high, medium, low PES, and you observe differences in something like churn rate, it's called lift or separation. So bigger numbers are better. The more separation, the better. So the fact we can get that, we're happy about that. Excited to see some correlation. We did not stop there. So PES is a composite of 3 scores. Right now, it's equally weighted, a third, a third, a third, between adoption, growth, and stickiness. But the question we had was, what if one of them is really important? What if one of them really drives or moves the needle for us? We wanted to go a level of depth beyond the aggregate score and really dig into each pillar. So once again, this is month 6. A lot of numbers here. Here's the pillar. You can see growth, adoption, and stickiness. And once again, big numbers are better. So the higher these numbers are, the more separation you have. So if you look at this, you can quickly see that growth for our business wasn't as correlated with either churn or expansion. Adoption and stickiness had much more of a correlation. So we wanted to dig in on that. And so because we are a data science team and ask a lot of questions, we want to say, well, what if you had high adoption and high stickiness, or low adoption and low stickiness? What did that do? So we plotted it, yet another chart. So this chart is showing on the x-axis adoption and on the y-axis stickiness. The pink circles are customers that churned, and the green circles are customers that renewed. So if you look up in the top right quadrant, those are high adoption, high stickiness customers. We love those. And you can see the pink circles relative to all the circles. There's not that many. There's quite a few circles overall and not a ton of pink. If you go down to the lower left, low adoption, low stickiness, there's a lot of pink circles relative to the overall number of circles. And sure enough, if you look at their churn rates, you can see that customers with low adoption and low stickiness, that bottom left quadrant, those customers churned almost 4.5 times more than the customers with high adoption and high stickiness. So we went from 2.5 on that slide a couple seconds ago, now up to 4.4. So even more lift or separation. And the customers in the middle, the ones that might have had high adoption but low stickiness, or high stickiness and low adoption, they're churning at a rate that's almost 3 times higher than the upper right quadrant. So once again, getting good separation, getting good signal, getting valuable information from the score. One more set of numbers. So we looked at not only the score itself. High scores are good, low scores not as good. But what also matters is the variability, the consistency. So this chart is showing 2 sets of customers. Both had the same engagement. The average adoption and stickiness was the same over a 1-year period. The green customers were very consistent. So you can see a super flat line. It means month over month over month, they had consistent engagement. Yellow customers went on a bit more of a journey. So they started low, kind of caught up, skyrocketed ahead, and then came back down. And so you can see there's some variability there. And so even though over a 12-month period, they had the same average level of engagement, the yellow customers, the ones that were more volatile, churned 2 to 3 times higher than the ones that were stable. So if we put all of this together, we have a heat map. So this heat map plots those 2 variables. On the x-axis is low, medium, and high adoption and stickiness, so same thing as that quadrant view. And on the y-axis, we have high and low variability. So did we have consistent engagement or not? And what this heat map shows is if you look way up in the top left, those are customers with double whammies here. Low adoption and stickiness and volatile. And if you compare that to the bottom right, those are our best customers, highly engaged and low variability. There's a 9x difference in churn rate. So anytime you're building a model or using data to analyze something, and you can use 2 variables, variability of the score and high, medium, low, to get a 9x separation in churn rates, that's pretty powerful stuff. So in summary, hopefully I've convinced you that PES does matter. You know, Todd mentioned this morning putting PES on your board slide. We feel confident that PES is a helpful, prominent metric that does drive business outcomes, and it can be a leading indicator to future revenue. And so, you know, I'd encourage you to take a look at your own PES score and try it out and do some similar analysis yourself. So what's next? If you work with analysts, analysts ask a lot of questions. It's a blessing and a curse. We just started our journey here, so we were left with a bunch of questions we didn't even get to explore, like, yes, we know volatility matters, but what if it was all positive? What if you started low and just kept trending up and up and up? Does that have different outcomes with retention? We also, if you've used PES, you know it's highly configurable. So there's an admin panel where you can decide how it's calculated. What if we use different parameters to do this entire analysis? Would we have seen different outcomes? Finally, we touched on this. The weightings for the pillars are a third, a third, a third. Should we add another setting to the admin screen that says, hey, maybe you should have the ability to weight those differently. Maybe 33% for each one is not the right mix for your business. Also, just love to hear from all of you that have used PES. Have you found any interesting insights or applications that you want to share with us? And if you're not using it, check it out. I think starting with core events is a great place to start. It's a logical place to start. And for our business, it's very meaningful and predictive. Lastly, PES is relatively new. So we are learning, making adjustments. And so Olivia is going to talk a bit more about what's coming next with PES.
Can we get a round of applause? Yeah. So that's awesome. Way back when they released MPS, they were able to correlate it with NRR. So as the PM for PES, it's amazing to hear that we can also connect PES to those other financial metrics. So I'm really excited to talk a little bit about what's coming in PES in the future. And really the headline here is that PES is getting better. In the spirit of always iterating and improving, there we go. We've heard your feedback, and we know that there's some changes we need to make to the actual product engagement score itself. So a few things, right? The configuration options for adoption are way too limiting, too restrictive. That any and all configuration option doesn't necessarily capture feature usage in a really meaningful way. We've also seen personally and from our customers that growth is way too volatile. And even in the analysis that Geoff just showed, growth doesn't necessarily pull its weight in the triangle. We've also heard there's a need for more actionable next steps. So a few changes we're making. First and foremost, adoption is getting more actionable. So one of the things we're doing is we'll be changing the actual underlying calculation for adoption to instead just look at the average number of core events adopted by active visitors or accounts. This is a lot clearer picture of feature usage. It's really easy to understand, is that average number going up or down? And if the average is going down, what are you going to do about it, right? It ends up being a metric that is much more meaningful and more actionable. This actually also is a feature request we've heard from customers, so thank you for that. The second one is growth is becoming more stable. The calculation that we use today just really doesn't cut it. So where we're going is we'll be adjusting growth to use another sort of industry metric, quick ratio. So if you're unfamiliar with quick ratio, it has its origins in the corporate financing and accounting worlds. It essentially gives you a metric that is a shorthand way to combine growth, churn, and retention into a single number. You can think about it as a heartbeat for your product's growth, as it contains data of users who are joining, recovering, and dropping in a given period. And then we'll scale that to fit within the product engagement score triangle. Really excited about this one because I do think it will help growth really pull its weight in the triangle. But that's not all. We're also thinking about how we can take PES one step further. So in case you missed it, we released a brand new trending PES chart about a month ago on the PES page. I'm happy to announce you'll now be able to add that as a widget to your dashboard, making it easy to compare your PES alongside NPS and all of those other data points you have on your dashboards. Looking a bit further afield, a little further out, we're actively in discovery and research for some of the big problems that we've heard since we launched PES. First and foremost, the need for more core events. And every customer we talk to has a slightly different use case here. So we're trying to come up with a solution that really works for everyone. The second one is enabling PES in account reports and better giving you a picture of PES at the account level, and then being able to export that data into other tools you care about, like Salesforce. So as I said, those two are a little bit further out, but would love, love, love to hear your feedback, your use cases. And as you can see, they're the top requests we have in this space. Would love to encourage you to learn more at the analytics booth over at Pendo Park. I'll be heading over there right after this. Would love to hear about your usage of core events, product engagement score, and any of your other favorite product metrics. And of course, I do just want to say a huge thank you to our customers and users of PES so far. We've been able to iterate a ton over the last few months, and it's really thanks to your feedback and your input. Thanks also for listening, and if you do have any other additional questions or want a copy of these slides and all of that great data that Geoff shared, feel free to scan the QR code and ask your questions.